Welcome back to Chess Tactic. Today, in round 1 of the titled Tuesday Grand Prix 2025-2026, rising star Mohammad Mehdi Abbasi Abeloui takes on the ever-dangerous Ian Nepomniachtchi. From the very first moves, the game explodes into a sharp English opening with early pawn pushes, piece sacrifices, and a kingside storm brewing. Both players throw punches in the center and on the flanks, with queens and bishops eyeing the enemy king. This blitz clash is pure chaos and creativity. Let's see how it unfolds. And here we go. White opens with the English, pawn to c4. This is a very flexible, sophisticated way to start the game, controlling the d5 square from the wing. Nepomniachtchi responds with pawn to e5, immediately challenging the center. This often leads to a reversed Sicilian structure, but Black is saying, I'm not afraid to play a classical, open game. White develops the knight to c3, a very standard and solid developing move, putting more pressure on the center. And Black does the same with knight to f6. Both sides are developing their pieces logically. A classic battle for central control is brewing. Knight to f3 for White, and now we have the 4 knights English on the board. This is a setup known for being very reliable for both sides. Nepo mirrors the development with knight to c6. The opening stage is very symmetrical, very calm. But don't be fooled. The tension is quietly building under the surface. Okay, a slight deviation here with pawn to e4. White decides to lock up the center, creating what's known as a Botvinnik structure. This changes the game from an open skirmish to a more strategic, positional fight. In response, pawn to d6 from Nepo. A very solid move, preparing to challenge White's central pawn chain and develop the late squared bishop. White immediately pushes with pawn to d4, staking a claim to the full center. White is playing very ambitiously now. And Black answers with fire, bishop to g4, putting an immediate pin on the f3 knight. This is Nepo's style. He's not going to sit back and let his opponent dictate the game. White advances the pawn to d5, kicking the knight on c6. This move grabs even more space, but it also gives Black a target to work against. And look at that! The knight hops right into d4. It's an incredible outpost, a real thorn in White's side. That knight is going to be a key player in this game. White plays bishop to e2, a sensible move that challenges the powerful knight and prepares to castle. Nepo decides to trade, knight takes bishop. He removes one of White's key defenders and simplifies the position just a little. Queen recaptures on e2. The position is a bit more clear now. White has a space advantage, but Black has active pieces and a clear plan. And that plan begins with pawn to g6. Nepomniachtchi is preparing to fianchetto his bishop to g7, where it will stare down the long diagonal like a sniper. White plays pawn to h3, asking the question of the Black bishop. A useful move that also gives the king a little escape square. The bishop simply retreats to d7. It's done its job of provoking h3, and now it will find a new role. Black is playing very patiently. White castles kingside, getting the king to safety. A very necessary and standard move. And there it is, bishop to g7. That dark squared bishop is now a monster, controlling a huge diagonal and keeping an eye on White's position. An interesting maneuver from White, knight to e1. The idea is to reroute this knight to d3, where it can bolster the defense and control key squares. Nepo castles kingside as well. Both kings are now tucked away, which can only mean one thing. The middle game storm is about to begin. Knight to d3, as planned. The white knight lands on a great square, cementing White's central control. And here comes the counterplay. Knight to h5 from Black. This might look strange on the side of the board, but it has a very dangerous purpose: to support a pawn storm on the king side. Watch the f-pawn closely. White responds to the flank attack by creating pressure on the queen side with pawn to c5. This is a classic chess principle. Counter an attack on the wing with a strike in the center or the opposite wing. But Nepo is all in on the attack. The queen swings over to h4, adding another powerful piece to the assault. The warning signs are flashing for White's king. White shifts the queen to e3. It's a multi-purpose move, defending the king side and keeping an eye on Black's plans. A very subtle but strong move, pawn to h6. This prevents White's bishop from coming to g5 to trade off Black's attacking pieces. A fantastic prophylactic touch. White develops the bishop to d2, connecting the rooks and completing development. It looks solid, but is it fast enough? And there it is, pawn to f5. This is the moment the game truly ignites. Nepomniachtchi blasts open the king side, declaring his intentions to go for a checkmate attack. The quiet strategic battle is over. Now it's a fight to the death. White responds with pawn to f3, trying to lock things down and keep the position closed. A natural reaction, but it also weakens the light squares around the king. Nepo just keeps pushing. Pawn to f4. He's not interested in closing things down. He's kicking down the door. This pawn cramps White's position and creates a permanent outpost on g3 for his knight. The White queen has to retreat to f2. It's being pushed back, and Black's pieces are getting closer and closer. Wow! What a move! Knight to g3. This knight lands on the perfect square, a venomous intruder right in the heart of White's position. It paralyzes the defense, attacks the rook, and prepares for even more chaos. This is the kind of move that wins games. White moves the rook over to c1, perhaps preparing for more queenside counterplay. But all the action, all the danger, is happening on the other side of the board. And the attack continues. Here comes the second wave with pawn to g5. Nepo is mobilizing all of his forces for this final assault. It feels like an avalanche. White plays knight to e2, a desperate attempt to trade off Black's monster knight on g3. It's the logical defensive try. But is it too late? No time for trades! Black smashes forward with pawn to g4, ripping open the g-file. He's willing to sacrifice this pawn just to get at the White king. White takes the pawn on g4, opening the f-file. This looks dangerous. What is Nepo's follow-up? Incredible. A bishop sacrifice. Bishop takes g4. Nepomniachtchi completely ignores the hanging knight and throws his bishop into the fire to expose the king. This is a brilliant, stunning move that leaves White's position in absolute tatters. What a calculation. White has no choice but to accept the sacrifice. Knight takes knight on g3. The board is now wide open, and now pawn takes knight, promoting the attack. The g3 pawn is a dagger pointed at the king, and the f-file is a superhighway for Black's rook. The pressure is immense. The White queen retreats to e3, trying to hold the position together. But Black's attack is relentless. Unbelievable! Another sacrifice. Bishop takes pawn on h3. This is absolutely breathtaking chess from Nepomniachtchi. He is tearing down the last wall of defense in front of the White king. After this, there is nowhere left for White to hide. A truly spectacular move. And in the face of this overwhelming assault, White finds a desperate, creative try. Queen to f3. This move offers the queen to block the f-file and stop the immediate threats. The board is an absolute masterpiece of tactical chaos. What a game! And that's where the game ends. An absolutely explosive attacking performance by Nepomniachtchi, with one brilliant sacrifice after another. We were left on a cliffhanger, with the board on fire. Thanks for joining us on Chess Tactic today.